Okay, everybody sees the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Welcome, everyone. And welcome to the Roboethics competition webinar. I'll start in just a minute. Just to wait, make sure. Okay, awesome. I'll get going. And so this webinar is recorded and we'll have it up on the website later on as well. So hopefully if there's anybody who is going to be joining the competition and is not here, it will be useful for you later on. So today we will go over the competition format very, very quickly and then talk about some of the details of the challenges. And then we will have a more extensive Q&A session with the amazing organizing committee that we have here. So why a roboethics competition? So roboethics poses some significant challenges for how we design interactions between robots and humans. And it might be very intuitive for us to know what to say, what to get, and how to act when we're in a social setting with different people. But that's very difficult to do for robots. And so this roboethics challenge really gets at the core of this issue of how should we design robots that act ethically and appropriately within social settings. So we have an amazing competition organizing committee, and all of these individuals are representing 5 different universities and different labs: Waterloo, McGill, University of Ottawa, Simon Fraser University, and Oregon State University. And the competition is actually consists of 2 different challenges. So the first challenge is an ethics challenge, and it requires no coding. This component of the competition takes place before ICRA. And then the second part of this competition is a hackathon challenge. And in this one, there's some simple coding that is required. You can participate in one or both of these challenges. And it's not necessary that if you attend one, does not necessarily mean that you need to also attend the other one as well. So we also offer free competition-only registration passes to ICRA as well. And if you're interested in these, make sure to contact us via our competition email, which we'll share later on as well. So let's talk about the ethics challenge a little bit. So in the ethics challenge, we have a scenario where you are basically running an interdisciplinary consulting company, and your company specializes in ethical decision-making policies for robots. You have a client, and your client is basically developing the future of consumer-ready home robots. The robot that they are thinking of developing has at least one primary function, and this function is the ability to pick up an object and then bring the object from one place to the other. And your challenge is that your client has hired you to basically propose a decision policy for their team to implement and to determine which requests the robot should accept, which requests it should not accept, and how it should not accept them. So once you have submitted a proposal, we want the proposal in 2 different formats. One in the project report format, and another one is in a video presentation. And there's more details about the requirements of these deliverables in that link that we have here, and we'll talk about it in the Q&A as well, depending on the questions. For the hackathon, this is a part that happens during ICRA, and basically the proposals from the ethics challenge that are submitted are going to be implemented during the hackathon, and participants of the hackathon could choose which proposal to implement on that day. The hackathon will be using a processing for the hackathon, and we will also do a quick demo after the short introduction to processing and see how it works. In terms of the timeline for this competition, today is our webinar. And on May 16th, that's the deadline for the submissions from the ethics competition. And on May 25th, the hackathon will be taking place in ICRA. And on May 27th, the awards will be announced for both of the challenges. So when it comes to the awards, we have a financial award of $1,000 available for the competition winners. And for the evaluation, for the ethics challenge, we'll be focusing on 5 different components, looking at how well the proposal is grounded in research. We'll be looking at a good understanding and analysis of the ethical context and scenario, and also looking at the quality and the effectiveness of the provided solution. And then we'll also be looking at how innovative, creative the solution is and how well it is communicated. So that was a very, very quick introduction to the competition. So I invite everybody to actually write your questions in the chat bar, and I'll be monitoring them. And I'll formally open to Q&A and also introduce our amazing organizing committee members, Dr. Ajung Moon, Dr. Brandon Dehart, we have Rahat, and Dr. Jimin Rim. So I invite you to turn on your videos here, if that's okay. And I will start by asking some questions, and then we will take the audience questions as they roll in. All right. So I'll start with Ajung. Can you tell us a little bit more about the competition scenario and how it came about, and what are the main problems that you think are important to address in the scenario?
Yeah, so the competition scenario, I'm really excited about it because the scenario really is to put yourself in the shoes of ethics consultancy. So we do not yet have these perfect robots that can fetch items from point A to point B. We have many different technical challenges around it, but while we're working on addressing these technical challenges, think of yourself as participants to this competition. Think of yourselves as the consultants working with these companies to figure out how can we incorporate ethics into the design of these systems, because there may be some awkward situations or socially inappropriate kind of fetch requests that the robot should be prepared to handle. So your job is really to think through what are some situations that are ethically challenging and how we should be considering them when we are trying to implement them into actual systems. So we're looking for proposals that we can actually implement at the hackathon. Yeah. I must have missed something though, so feel free to jump in, others.
Yeah, no, that's great. Actually, on the sort of topic of hackathon, I'm going to ask Rahat if you don't mind to sort of share a little bit more about the hackathon and the processing sort of platform now.
Sure. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I'm super excited to be here, and so let's talk about hackathon a bit. So the proposals that the proposal teams are submitting, the judges will judge them, and from those proposals, some of them will be selected and they will be implemented in the hackathon by the participants in the hackathon. So we are using the processing software for like the graphics and coding stuff for the hackathon. So I'll just go over processing and show an example of the last year's Roboethics competition scenario. So I'll just share my screen right now. I think you can see the screen right now. Okay, so this is basically the processing IDE, and here if you have basic knowledge about coding, getting into processing is very easy. And we have there are hundreds of tutorials in YouTube, and even processing is very open source, and people can just get into their website and learn a lot about processing. So in this scenario, I took the last year's in this coding, you can see that I took the last year and tried to implement it in a very simple way. So it's a very small code, like it's like 85 lines. I'll just run and let's see. So you can see that here is like a little girl. Sorry, not little girl. It's a girl. Then this is her boyfriend, and this is her mother. And there's a robot in their house. And I have some cases here. Like there are 3 cases. For one, this teenager girl asks the robot for alcohol. So what should the robot do? The robot should not bring the alcohol to the teenager. So if we press 1, we can see that in the terminal, the robot says, sorry, you cannot have alcohol till you're 18. Then for the next case, there's the boyfriend is asking the robot for the mom's credit card. The mom is this teenager girl's mom. So why would the boyfriend ask the robot to bring the credit card? So that's an ethical issue. So what would the robot do here? If we press 2, we can see that in the terminal it says, sorry, I cannot perform that action. But in the third case, here's mom asks robot for the credit card. So if we press 3, the robot goes towards the credit card and says that coming right now. So this was a very simple implementation of how you can use processing to implement the proposals. And you can also have animations in this implementation. So I would like to show another short example. Like here we have if you have used Chrome, the Chrome browser, you definitely seen the dinosaur game. So if we play this, here you can see that I can jump, there's train coming, and it's basically the dinosaur game here. And the fun thing is it was written in like 46 lines of codes. It's that easy in processing. So I just wanted to share this, and I hope if you have any questions, we would be able to answer you for this processing stuff. And there's more to it in the processing website. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Raj, for that introduction. So we have some questions from the audience. So I'll pass this one to Brandon. So who do you think is this competition for? Is it for undergrads, graduate students, PhDs, postdocs? And a follow-up question is how many teams do you think you expect will participate?
Okay, sure. Thanks all for coming and the questions. I think this is going to be really really helpful and useful for us to understand what everybody's thinking about, and also kind of to know what everybody is wondering about out there. Ideally, this competition, because of the different ranges and because of the multiple competitions, we're hoping to target anybody who is interested in kind of the overlapping intersection of ethical challenges and robotics. So that might be undergrads who want to just write some processing at ICRA. It might be grad students, PhDs who might be working on ethical dilemmas for robotics, for tech in general, for AI, etc. And could be postdocs, it could even be professors who want to kind of figure out what kind of frameworks we might have to develop as we move forward to really understand some of these ethical dilemmas and the social norms we have to meet, and who is actually in charge of making these decisions. Is it the companies? Is it the owner of the robot? Is it the manufacturer? How do these things actually end up in the robots, right? There are many socioeconomic and legal and policy decisions to be made, along with the technical pieces of how do we actually implement these things. So I think it's this, there are pieces of this competition that could and should apply across the board, right, from undergrad through to full professors. In terms of how many teams I expect to participate, I believe we already have 4, maybe a few more registered, and we're hoping for, just for the proposal piece anyways, ideally we want to have probably at least 5 or 6 proposals come in, and then as many people as want to take part in the hackathon, because part of the goal with the hackathon is to get as many eyeballs and as many hands and brains thinking about and working on these kinds of challenges. Actually, folk who maybe don't feel as comfortable with the frameworks, the background, and everything on the ethical side, because they will have fully completed, analyzed, evaluated proposals of decision policies that they can then take and try to hack into a form of visualized solution that we can kind of see how these work. We can maybe challenge them and play a little bit of devil's advocate to see, what about this scenario? What about this situation, this person, this object, etc. So we're hoping for lots. We've got, like I said, I think 4 or 5 already registered for the proposals, but it should be good. And we're looking forward to having lots of people take part in the hackathon kind of day of as well.
Great, thank you. So the next question we have is about evaluation, and I'll pass this one to Jimin. So if an ethical proposal, so a proposal from the Ethics Challenge, is not picked by a hackathon team for implementation, is it still eligible for prizes?
Well, that's actually a very good question, because it kind of relates to what were evaluations. So short answer, yes. So we're not only looking for how implementable the proposal solutions are, we're also looking at other criteria, such as like how in-depth the teams looked into the ethical scenario, how creative the solutions are. So we do have other other scoring systems to measure not just the implementability for the hackathon. So yes, there will be multiple prizes depending on different scoring evaluation schemes.
Something I want to add here also is we are planning to have the video submissions from the ethical challenge proposals to be displayed at ICRA in person. So it'll be streamed on big TV for people who may be passing by ICRA to say, hey, I can give that a try. Or teams who may show up not having picked something to be able to actually hear all your pitches and try to implement it on the spot as well. And the hackathon is also run both online and in person, which means that if you have buddies who may be keen to implement something, maybe you might want to recruit this friend of yours and participate on the hackathon portion as well.
So I don't know, I'll just maybe get you to continue on that line to answer this question that just came in, which was, do we have to be in a team to submit an ethical proposal?
I would say no. If you're an individual and you want to do everything by yourself, you should feel free to go ahead. One thing we are offering, though, is if you would like to be paired with somebody to work together as a team, we are able to match you with others who may be looking for a counterpart as well. So that is an opportunity. I'm personally hoping that this opens up more of an interdisciplinary conversations with lots of people in the shape of a team in that sense. But by no means, there's no requirement for you to have multiple people to submit something.
I'll also jump in because I had this question when I was talking about this competition with someone in person a little while back, to mention that if you decide to submit a proposal and then also take part in the hackathon, there's nothing that says you have to then implement your proposal, right? You could then work on someone else's, maybe you can implement someone's and they can implement yours. There's lots of different ways that this can work. Really the main connection between the two competitions is the actual proposals themselves, because each, if a proposal isn't submitted, then building a solution that uses it at the hackathon isn't going to make a ton of sense, because part of the intent is that those proposals are kind of, here is how the policy should work, make it happen as part of the hackathon. So if you want to see something in there, then I encourage you to register and submit a proposal, even if your only intent is so that you can then build that at the hackathon, right?
I would like to jump in to say that even if you're submitting your proposal and you cannot attend the hackathon in person, you can still attend the hackathon online. We have both the options.
Great. As I'm waiting for other questions to come in, so please feel free to write your questions here. I have a general question, and whoever feels comfortable can pick on it. But so, what is a great, good submission to you? So, what are you looking for? What's your dream submission? And anybody who can chime in as you like.
Oh, well, there's no dream solution. Well, that's really, really tricky. But if I can just provide a little background of how we planned this challenge and how we kind of devised the evaluation criteria, is we were trying to set up a scenario that's adoptable in the near future and something that we can understand, not something like, hey, build an ethical space robot. No, we're trying to build something that we can really relate to and implementable within like maybe 5 years, at most 10 years. So something not so, well, creative, but not too creative. So one of the criteria for evaluation that includes practicality and applicability, which basically, yes, something we can implement or imagine implementable. And also, yeah, we're asking for a lot. We're also looking for creativity as well. Not something really obvious, but like there might be some people, but not just something too obvious. But let's think about like variety of scenarios as possible and try to find solutions for that. So that's that. And in terms of evaluation, well, I'm kind of like going to evaluations as well. Like we have different criteria, but it's subjective. Like what I find amazing ethical decision or solution might differ from other judges or other people. So on the evaluation criteria, we're also adding for qualitative, like subjective evaluations. So we'll gather all this. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this. Like this year, like the judges are the amazing experts of roboethics, experts, global experts. So they will be judging all the proposals and provide not just the scores, but subjective feedback. So that's also one of the parts that I'm looking forward to. So yes, no question to ideal scenario, but I'll pass it on to other people.
Yeah, if I can jump in there, I mean, I am just very curious to receive how people might want to tackle this challenge, because I do believe this is the starting point for something really, really amazing to happen down the road, which is actually proposing something that might be implemented in the future consumer robot that grabs and delivers objects to different locations or to people. So any kind of solutions or comparisons of different solutions that allow us to think about what kind of design standards, policies, or unique kind of technical solutions can address some of these ethical challenges. I think that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for in this competition. So in that sense, thought-provoking would be one element that I would look for.
There's also a very interesting question by Paige. Thanks for the question. So yeah, thought-provoking, it kind of relates to thought-provoking. So what Paige asked is, this kind of follows with the practicality discussion. So do we want this to be as generalizable as possible, or should we be focusing on a persona, like culturally, socioeconomic, family structures? I don't know, like personally, I would say to not limit yourselves. Maybe I'm just giving out like random examples. If we're talking about maybe diabetes specific family, like it's specific, it can be generalizable for this small, not small, this like defining characteristics. So like by generalization, don't think about just like massive population. Like there's also criteria for how much in depth you cared about devising your scenario. So we're looking for overall. So do not just focus on one solution, like one criteria, and I don't know, like be creative. we're creative people.
One thing I will say, while we were developing kind of the split approach, I guess, this year, because in previous, like when we offered for the first offering event of this competition, everything was kind of all in one. So you were making your proposal, you were coming up with the idea, you were writing code, you were doing the whole thing was kind of one big bulky mass. And part of the intent with Split this year is that the proposals are intended to be more general than the hackathon solutions. What I mean by that is we have applied some constraints on the proposal. It'll be in a home environment. The robot's primary task, or one of its primary tasks, is fetching things, picking things up and bringing them somewhere else, collecting something from someone and bringing it to somebody else, etc. But that's kind of the piece to focus on for this decision-making policy. But other than that, we haven't really restricted the format, the form of the robot. Does it fly? Does it walk? Does it roll? Doesn't really matter. The proposal is really about how should decisions be made in general by the robot or whoever is programming them about which requests should and should not be honored, why they shouldn't be honored or should be honored, etc. So it's more about that framework, I guess, would be a good way to put that. Whereas for the hackathon, we'll say, like, here is a specific apartment, here is a specific family group, here is a specific list of objects. And then using the general framework outlined in a proposal, then the hackathon participants kind of do their best to implement that general umbrella policy in the specific scenario of this family in this place with these things. So by that token, the proposals will be more general, but they don't have to be as generalizable as possible. It's within a house, it's a robot picking things up. We're assuming that the family owns the robot. It's not like a lease thing, whatever. Like, we get away from some of the legal and the policy pieces by saying this is a family unit that owns a robot. It is in their home, right? That's kind of the umbrella the proposals are under. And then a specific version of each of those is kind of where the hackathon is. So it's not super general, but there is an expectation that it is generalizable enough for whatever scenario we come up with for the hackathon.
Yeah, to build on that too, I think the reason why we have this ethics challenge kind of scenario as though you're consultants for a company is that if we envision a robotics company that would build such a system, you don't want to be building one robot for the one family and you have the entire startup just for that family. That doesn't sound quite practical, right? Chances are we are coming up with a company that is able to create consumer robots for as wide of consumer market as possible. But we also know that localization is important. What you'll consider to be socially appropriate in one country may not be the same case for another country, or one family versus another. So at that proposal level, I would say that you do want to think about this generalizability question a little bit, as Brendan was mentioning as well. Yeah.
If I can add one more thing to it, in the proposal, we're asking for the impact of your proposed solution and like critical evaluation of your solution. So we're not just looking for, we're also like asking everyone as the community to think the impact, like what were some challenges. So in the proposal, we're looking for into the in-depth thinking of roboethics. So that's what I wanted to emphasize.
Thank you for all those. I'll just ask the questions that we have as we have more questions, since we have a little more time. So I think this question came up just before as we're talking. So if somebody says, I don't know anything about ethics, should I participate? What would be your response to that question? Maybe, should I pick on somebody? Maybe I'll pick on Brandon.
So my answer to should I participate is always yes. If you don't know about something but you're interested, this is a great way to learn. Competitions are an excellent way to kind of bootstrap your knowledge and your information about different things. We will be providing kind of information and some details about maybe things that are good to look at for background, even just seeing some of the solutions. If you register just to do the hackathon later, where you can kind of sign up on the mailing list and keep up with kind of posts on Ori, which I'm sure Shalali will mention at some point. Just having a look at how the competition's put together, what some of the challenges are, looking at maybe the video from last year discussion that happened there and the panel discussions that happened, is really a good way of kind of bootstrapping your information and your knowledge to get into this kind of setup, whether you're coming from the robotics side, the ethics side, or something entirely different. Because this is a challenge that is going to be facing everyone sooner or later. So getting to know at least the high level challenges and the high level issues and potential solutions is going to be helpful for anybody who's even remotely attached to any kind of field like this.
Great. And on that note, where would be some? What do you think some of the useful resources for people to learn from about these issues? Maybe I'll pass to Ajahn. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, this roboethics and applied ethics, like so our team is gathering some of the reading materials that we can base off, like good starting points. So that will be uploaded on the webpage soon. So that will be some guidance, but we're not looking for specific, like we use this specific ethical value. We're not looking for that. So Brandon already mentioned. So yes, interest, that's the most important thing. And yes, the resources will be updated.
Any other thoughts on this question or no?
Yeah, and maybe I can go back to the question of I don't know anything about ethics, kind of a dilemma. I would say I think a lot of, especially roboticists or technologists, have this notion that, oh, ethics, that seems quite far from what I do. But that's not really true. I think the reality is that we have this moral compass that we use as humans all the time. It just, we don't label it as this is an ethics XYZ. So if you think of yourself having a socially interactive person who applies the notion about what is socially appropriate or not, that is already quite close to the kind of problems that we may be talking about. As Rahad was demonstrating, if a stranger were to come in and ask for some valuables in your home, okay, well, maybe you have some objections of the robot just willy-nilly giving away your diamonds, right? And that does not require to be an ethics PhD to be able to talk about. So I would highly encourage you for that as well. And I also see that Chung is joining us on Zoom as well. She's a stellar undergraduate student who helped put together this competition last year. And as far as I know, Chung, I don't think you have a PhD in ethics either. So I think there's a good example there as well.
Also, another way of thinking is what kind of ethical robot that you want in your house, or what kind of behaviors you don't want the robot to show in your house. Maybe that way could be a starting point to think of designing ethical robots. Okay, great. We have roughly about 10 minutes of our planned sort of webinar time. So I'm just wondering if there's any questions or any topics that any of the committee members want to sort of discuss, or if there's any last minute questions from our attendees. Otherwise,
I'm never one to not talk given the opportunity. One thing that I would kind of encourage everyone to think about, especially when designing the proposals, it's more applicable for the policies themselves than the implementation of them. But it's a question of, if this robot, as a few people have already talked about, right? If one of these robots is in your home, then you have a really strong idea, and usually a good idea of okay, it should do this, it shouldn't do this, it should listen to me, or whatever it might be. But we're thinking in terms of broader scale. So at a societal level, if these robots are going to be in long-term care facilities, in hospitals, in grandma's house or your parents' place, or whatever it might be, every generation has more and different technology, and this is going to be the next one, right? So is this something that's going to be at your parents' house? Is this something that's going to be at your house? Is this something that's going to, what category, what type of life, what type of lifestyle, what societal norms, all of these things are going to affect it, right? So even if I had the robot in my house with my kids versus at my parents' house versus at my grandparents' house, the types of things that I would expect that robot to do are very different. And ideally, the policy that you come up with, the decision making you come up with, needs to apply across those things. Because as Ajahn was saying, if this is a company selling a robot, they want to sell the robot to as many people as possible. They're a company, right? That's kind of how that works. But in order to make that happen, probably they're going to say, okay, well, the robot goes to blah, and the person who buys it customizes this particular set of dials and switches and knobs and whatever, digitally, generally, to determine how it's going to behave. But those dials and switches and knobs have to have a grounding and a framework behind them in order to do something useful. So you have to have, maybe objects are categorized. Maybe objects are, when they're brought into the house, if the robot is going to pick them up, you have to give it information about the thing. This belongs to a person and only that person can have it. Or this belongs to the family. This is general purpose. This is whatever, right? You have to somehow figure out whether it's the company or a government or the person who owns the robot, who is actually giving that information to the robot or the robot software interchangeably, so that it can make these kinds of decisions. Because for something like the hackathon, you're going to take the decision policy and you're going to say, okay, well, based on this policy, here are the objects. The objects in this policy should be treated as blah. But when you do that, you're going to be building that solution, even with the decision policy. You're going to be building that solution with your inherent biases built in. So that's why hackathon groups and teams might work a little better, especially if you have a diverse group from different backgrounds, different training, different countries, etc., because you're going to have a more rounded perspective of how that actually could work. But also it makes it more realistic for the very multicultural, multi-application, multi-generational target audience of robots like this.
Ajahn, would you like to?
Yeah, I just wanted to expand on the hackathon just so that everybody has an idea of what the in-person portion of this competition could feel like. So we'll have a huge space with tables and power bars around, so people can hang around and code away. And on one side, obviously, as we mentioned before, we will have your proposed solutions actually featured there as well. But just note that ICRA as a conference is huge. It's a multi-thousand registrant kind of an attended international conference. Lots of roboticists will come there. And you can see the list of exhibitors, lots of industry partners, and so forth. So who's who in robotics may be showing up there this year. So your solutions will be highly featured. So think about that kind of diversity too, even if you're not from robotics. I'm personally hoping that those who show up at the hackathon will actually be able to create some connections that they hadn't thought to connect before. Maybe somebody else who's also interested in this kind of roboethics question, but from technical perspectives or otherwise, right? So hoping to build a little bit of a community here.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Are there any last minute questions or any remarks from Rahat or Jimin? You guys want to share? No. So we have, this is, our second time, and the second time that this competition is being run. So there's a lot of things to obviously troubleshoot and to learn for the organizing committee as well. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at raiselab.ec. e@mcgill.ca, which is the competition email that we'll be using, I believe. So I just wanted to, put that out there. And so in case anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And if you have not signed up already on the interest form, you can sign up and sign up for the competition as well. Is there any remarks anybody want to make about potential questions that might come up?
So we have the go-to email address for the competition itself. I'll put it on the chat bar as well, because I think the raiselab.ec is for the lab. So.
Oh, sorry. Okay, never mind. Okay. Different. Okay, never mind. Sorry about that. So everybody just please go to the go-to email address. There was a bit of a miscommunication there.
It's on the website as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I will share the form here as well in case people have not signed up. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. And thank you so much to Adjunct Brandon, Jimin, and Rahat for spending the afternoon with us here. And yeah, I will, I guess, formally conclude this webinar.
And thank you, Shale, for organizing and moderating.
Yeah, my pleasure.
See you, everybody, at the competition.
Thank
Thanks
you
all.
all.
See you. Thank you.